Welcome to On Air with LG, brought to you by LG Electronics European Air Solution Team. We know that in today's digital world, time is limited, attention is short, and everyone is busier than ever. That's why we're bringing the HVAC industry's hottest topics on air, where you can both learn and be inspired on the go. Join us for a new episode every 2 weeks, where we answer your most pressing questions and explore the constantly shifting world of HVAC topics like the energy transition, renewable innovation, and the past, present, and incredibly bright future that our industry has to offer to both our lifetime achievers as well as the next generation of professionals. I'm Melissa Moeller, your host throughout this series, and I hope you enjoy. In today's On Air with LG, we're joined by Christianna Papazahariou, LG Air Solutions European Head of Engineering Center and Business Strategy. We'll chat about what it means to future-proof Europe's building stock for both renovations and new builds, and how manufacturers can help HVAC installers navigate today's complex regulation ecosystem. Discover key timelines and insights that can help prepare end customers for a more sustainable and cost-efficient tomorrow. Hi, Christianna. It's nice to have you here with us today. How are you?
Hi, Melissa. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being willing to talk with me today. So let's just get started on our conversation. With today's end customers, they're more empowered and informed than ever before. I think every industry is sort of facing that. With the internet, they can have the power to look up things and be more informed about the product that they're seeking, etc. So how does that change the game for manufacturers and actually, in the end, for installers? What do we need to think about? Where do we need to go in terms of meeting their needs?
Well, it's a very valid comment that habits have changed. And it's, I think, a common feature for both professional customers and private individuals, private customers. Well, obviously, the industry is changing alongside with its customers. Sure. And nobody's forgotten. I think that manufacturers overall have developed digital solutions to accompany those customers who are more technologically literate. But it goes without saying that more traditional habits are not neglected, so that everybody is taken on board and everybody can feel comfortable with making choices around how to upgrade a heating system in a household, how to best implement a heating and cooling ventilation solution in an office building, how to make a nice environment in a retail shop, etc. So installers are part of this reality, of course. There are younger generations who are really IT literate, so very comfortable with only using web-based tools, and that's fine with the industry. There are plenty of applications that can accommodate for installation advice, unit startup, only with digital tools, as much as people who are more maybe conservative or traditional. And that's also very fine because units can, of course, operate with traditional ways.
Right. All right. Well, so in general, I think with the informed consumer comes the complexities of that and that pressure to kind of really understand exactly what they want, what they need, what would work for their house. So what do we want everyone to understand about future-proofing their homes or their businesses? You mentioned retail shops and things like that are part of the mix as well. So what kind of basic principles do we want people to really get?
Well, we want to have people understand, both professionals and non-professionals, that every decision matters. So upgrading a heating and cooling system can have a climate impact. It's as simple as that. So fossil fuel-based technologies we should drive away from those technologies basically as much as possible and as soon as possible, and make people realize that an upgraded heating or cooling system can really make a difference in the fight against climate change, in an attempt to make the European continent more sustainable. We're looking at being climate neutral by 2050, so the industry as a whole has to move towards that direction. And I think that Europe can be looked after as a very virtuous example of this attempt.
Definitely. I think we're kind of leading the way for the world, actually, here in Europe, of making things more green, and the regulations are going in that direction as well. That's one thing I want to talk to you about today specifically, because that's your true expertise. So what I want to understand is, where are the regulations heading, and what types of key statistics or key dates do we need to have in mind as manufacturers, installers, the end customer, businesses? Everybody needs to get there at the same, let's say, pace. So what are we really high level need to think of in the next, let's say, I don't know, half a decade?
Well, yeah, of course, there are short-term quick fixes in a way, as much as there are longer-term strategies and policies. So in the short run, what we see as an industry is the shift away from high GWP refrigerants, so climate-damaging refrigerants. Yeah. And the industry has majoritarily shifted to newer refrigerant technologies, and I think that this trend is here to stay. There are plans at a European Union level to even ban F-gases in small capacity units. So this is still to be confirmed in the next couple of years. But we expect a major change in refrigerant technology for what we could typically categorize as household cooling or heating units. And then there is the more macroeconomic type of approach, which has to do with the building more generally. Yeah. And there we're looking at very, very ambitious renovation strategies at European level. We are currently reaching a 1% average of deep renovation levels that include the renovation of the heating and the cooling system, which is really, really low in order to reach climate neutrality by 2050. And actually the ambition needs to triple, or that level needs to triple, so that we are able to meet higher energy saving standards within a renovation policy. And then a trend which is totally embedded and confirmed has to do with the fact of moving to nearly zero energy buildings. So buildings that basically require very low energy levels, that rely a lot more on renewables, and that encourage the production of energy on site or nearby. So we're looking at network heating, for instance. So again, there's a major responsibility over project developers, project owners, and manufacturers together to launch this trend, to produce solutions that are there to stay, that are future-proof, that are error-free as much as possible, and to contribute their fair share in achieving this target. Okay.
And in terms of the building stock today, I know we've talked about this before, like where are we in terms of what's available today, or what about the building stock in Europe?
Well, today, 80% of the buildings that are built today will still be around in 50 years down the road. So there's a major, major responsibility of whoever is getting involved in a building project to keep this in mind, that the effects and the impact of heating or cooling equipment will still produce its consequences in half a century from now. Hence why it's really important to look at reliable solutions that are fit for the climate we're considering, that are fitting for the size of the household or of the business that we're considering, that are fitting the overall expectations of what is happening now, but what is also going to happen in half a century from now.
Yeah, of course. No pressure. So going back to renovations, in the case of a renovation, what types of technology does the installer need to be considering and informing the end customer on, and maybe what types of shifts in the work that they do does the installer need to kind of make in order to get there for the modern project developer or business or end customer homeowner?
I think there are two types of situations. There are situations where there's an emergency to replace a system that has basically gone out of commissioning. So it's not an ideal situation because there is shortage of manpower available to really go on the spot and fix it. As much as hasty decisions can lead to inappropriate equipment being spec'd in a project. Sure. So I would encourage both project owners who are currently, operating a system, as much as installers try to think ahead as much as possible and be prepared in knowing and in envisaging what are the alternative solutions for a system which has been running, let's say, for the past 20 years. There are reasonably good reasons to believe that this system will probably go end of life anytime soon.
Okay.
And then I would also consider in a separate type of approach the new projects that are going to be launched, and there for sure the industry has an advisor role in sizing the system in the most appropriate way, in selecting the equipment with the best efficiency output possible, so that both customers are happy with what they have at hand, and with what installers and professionals are able to implement with good installation techniques. So as error-free as possible.
Yeah, sure. Do you feel like the modern installer has more pressure, or it's just a different type of pressure? Do you feel like they have to be experts in different areas, or is it just sort of a shift as we're all experiencing in every industry because of digitalization and things like that? Like, how does it differ for them?
Well, when I think of an installer, I would qualify him with 3 different characteristics. Okay. One would be an interior designer, because you could probably have a say on what unit would look like best in a given project. Then he could also be a health advisor, because now people are looking more and more at projects that improve their indoor air quality. So thankfully, industry has a lot of choices available in terms of air purification features and machines that can actually improve the levels of CO2 concentration, volatile organic compounds, etc., bacteria elimination, all that. So yeah, it's quite an expertise to be able to handle. And as a third characteristic, I would even list an installer as a potential financial advisor, because installing a project comes at a cost, and his added value would really be to select and to propose those units that can benefit from incentives to reduce the total cost of installation and ownership, and efficient units that run with low electricity consumption, so that the energy bills remain reasonably low, and hence have an impact on a household's or on a business operator's assets as a whole.
Well, installers, you heard it here first. You can update your CV to be a interior designer, health advisor, and banking expert.
Exactly.
So going on to the banking and the financial aspects of an HVAC project, what do our B2B customers need to understand about the incentives, the shift towards regulation-compliant materials are actually being supported by the government? So what types of examples can we take from various European countries in terms of helping the end customer understand exactly, let's say, what's in it for them, or why to make the shift now?
Well, not all European countries handle financial incentives and support to more sustainable heating and cooling systems in the same way. Right. Unfortunately. But I would say that thankfully the industry as a whole has taken this totally on board, and products which are placed in the European market today majoritarily satisfy those standards, so that customers do not feel fooled in a way about what they choose and the extent to which they can benefit from lower costs of installation. So the responsibility and the role of the industry is to really guide its own professional customers, so that they can in turn cascade the right information to the end customer, because regulations tend to change a lot and often.
Yes.
So we really need to keep an eye on what's going on and inform customers in the simplest possible way and in the most transparent way. And I would really like to stress that those companies who take this role seriously are also participating in various certification schemes that are quite notorious all across Europe. And this is an extra credit to the way in which they handle their production in a way as to be compliant with whatever regulations require locally.
Sure.
So yeah, keep an eye for our installer friends on various certification schemes like Keymark or Eurovent that have quite powerful online tools to compare units, select units, and make an informed choice about what is available out there.
In certain cases, I have the feeling that the shift to less intensive fossil fuel or, zero fossil fuel technologies is kind of a no-brainer for the end customer. And I just want to understand, like, is there a catch? Is it as simple as it seems in terms of making that decision? And especially in the case of incentives, in certain cases, I think a lot of European governments are willing to almost pay for the entire investment. So what would you say to a customer that's right now thinking about making the shift but isn't exactly sure whether or not the timing is right or if it's the right call?
That's a very valid question because the perception around what is good and what is bad can be quite blurred when you look at the Europeans on a European scale.
Yeah.
There are countries where the bans are very straightforward. We know, for instance, that in the Netherlands there's a gas ban that will kick in very, very shortly.
Simple.
So basically, people are left with no choice but consider renewable energies for heating and cooling. And there are countries where the ban is not that straightforward, and there are support schemes to encourage alternative technologies, but without naming the fact that fossil fuels are not a sustainable solution for heating and cooling. So, of course, customers have to find their way in this environment.
Sure.
But again, our role as manufacturers and as an industry is to really not be ashamed about what we are doing, because we are doing the right thing, and we know that we have taken the right approach and the right bet on which technology is the best fit for the expectations for the climate and for a good and healthy environment.
All right. Now, in terms of the ecosystem in general, the HVAC industry, the regulations, etc., it seems quite complicated for everybody to kind of navigate and figure out. So what can manufacturers do to kind of ease the mind of the installers, for example, in sort of getting where they need to be in order to be able to facilitate the easy way through this complicated ecosystem? Are there certain pillars that a company can put in place to help the installer on the road?
Do you mean at the purchase phase? I'm sorry, I did not.
No, that's okay. No. What can manufacturers kind of put in place in order to sort of let's say, overall business sentiment or any types of direction that we're taking our end customers on in order to make sure that they understand how to fully navigate the ecosystem, regulations, incentives, product offerings, etc.?
I think that we need to be very, very clear about our product roadmaps.
Okay.
Really state what is coming up and what should progressively be phased out so that people can make the right choices and their time, resources, and money are not wasted.
Sure.
And I think that in Europe, the industry is quite homogeneous and moving towards the right direction in quite a comprehensive way. So alongside with the product roadmaps, I think there's a major and responsibility and expectation coming from our professional customers to be trained on like almost a personal basis.
Sure.
And I think that there is let's say quite some expertise with industry players in Europe to share knowledge, to train people. There are academies, be it with LG or with other manufacturers that actually attract those professional customers to upgrade their knowledge, to address pain points, to make sure that we improve our installation techniques so that everything across the full supply chain is running in a smooth way.
Yeah, makes sense. And actually, that's the whole point of this conversation today. And in general, the podcast is knowledge sharing and sort of pooling together our interests and our information so that everybody can kind of benefit from that and opening the conversation in a more seamless and systematic way.
Well, I mean, if I can just add on this point, I've also seen the industry growing up a lot over the past 20 years, because I've been around for quite some time now. And alongside with, requiring installers to be trained, to be certified for handling F-gases, we are now even looking at certifying the buildings for their overall efficiency. So there's no possible way that you can, actually get away with crappy stuff that is working today and maybe not working that well tomorrow. So the margin of error is getting smaller and smaller.
Sure.
But we should never, give up and build our maturation process more and more to make sure that we're only improving and nobody is left outside.
Yeah. I think that's a very nice point to end on in general, because I think it's quite optimistic and in a way kind of a rallying cry and a challenge for the industry, which is quite nice. But I do have one question that's a little bit more personal for you, Christianna. If you could go back and have a chat with yourself 20 years with your 20-year-old self, what advice would you give that person? What would you tell her based on what you know now about the way you've lived your life?
Okay. Well, I would probably say something which echoes a lot that we have already discussed and was a little bit the thread of our discussion today, about not fearing asking for help, for advice, because this is not something that makes you look weaker, but it actually helps you stay strong and grow stronger.
Definitely.
So I would really, encourage our installer friends, our professional customers, and even our private customers to reach out for help if they need advice.
Sure.
Industry is here to support them, and we will gladly do it.
That's a great point. And thank you so much for your time today, Christianna.
Pleasure.
I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.